Welcome everyone to the May Ignite Board Meeting. If we could all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. It's time for public comment. Any public comment, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll move on down then to the consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to approve the items included in the consent calendar.
You ready?
Ready?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar consisting of the board meeting minutes for April 16th, 2025, the approval of payables as submitted, and the approval of the district monthly financial statements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Excuse me, motion carries. Next up, Tony, is the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
First item is the Atlas Project Core Investment DDA Third Amendment item. I'm going to refer to Core Investment as CI as I walk through this. So the CI team is seeking consideration of a disposition and development agreement phasing plan extension, and therefore a third amendment to the DDA for areas 9, 16 through 19. So for your benefit, on the screen, we have the Atlas Project site, and this is the area that is under the CI ownership. This is 9, 16, 17, 18, and 19. The current phasing plan that they have in the DDA is as follows for those areas. And you see that the first completed units were supposed to be completed in September 15 of 2025. So that's not going to happen. And the reason why is that I will share with you in a minute. So the team is asking for a phase one phasing plan extension. The CI team, for some background information, the CI team closed on the acquisition of these areas on April 15, 2024. Given the current phasing plan, the completion date, as I just shared, should have been for 4 units by September 15th of 2025. The CI team could have put in for building permits immediately following closing, but they did not. The CI team submitted for 8 building permits for Area 19 in October of 2024. The Coeur Building Department worked back and forth with the CI team regarding the building permit submissions from October 24 through March 2025. The permit application review finally started in March 2025 once the city acquired all of the needed information. The Coeur Building Department shared that the permit process usually takes 2 months or less to complete once they have all the information they need. So an end of April 2025 timeframe would be expected for approval. So all 8 of the Area 19 building permits were approved on April 30th, 2025. Now, Coeur d'Alene's contractor, Le Riviere, had taken longer to complete the planned improvements on the site impacting Area 19. So the city delayed issuance of the Area 19 building permits until those site issues were remediated. What happened is that the project was substantially complete in September 2024, with a few punch list items remaining. Ignite CDA found out the first week of April 2025 that the city was taking the position to hold up building permit issuance because of the outstanding punch list items. The big issue that we ran into in the fall of 2024 is that the Coeur d'Alene Water Department instituted a new standard that street trees had to be at least 10 feet away from each water meter. This requirement was added to the project after all the meters and street trees were installed. So they kind of added on a requirement after we finished the work. So Ignite debated with the city water department for a few weeks and finally just agreed to accept the new standard. And we decided to move the trees, but the contractor asked if they could move the trees in the spring versus the fall to save the trees so they wouldn't kill them. So we agreed to that. So that's what occurred. The trees and everything else got finished and around the Area 19 area, and it was all completed by April 21st, 2025. So given those dates and the combination of the development teams back and forth with the city building department and the contractors kind of delaying getting this new standard met with the water department, the Atlas project team, which is comprised of myself and Ms. Quaid, Phil Boyd from West Comer, Hillary Patterson from the city of Coeur d'Alene, and Ben Wharton from Heartland, analyzed the CI phasing plan extension request and are recommending to the board that the board consider granting an extension of only phase 1 of the DDA's phasing plan, with the first 4 units being completed by April 30th of 2026 versus September of 2025. This equates to a 7-month timeframe extension for phase 1. The timeframes for phases 2 through 10 will remain unchanged. The financial impact to Ignite CDA of granting a 7-month phase 1 time extension is approximately $13,000. So if we come forward with that recommendation, I would answer any questions you may have about this third amendment to the CI DDA.
Any questions, comments? Brendan?
So with the change in requirement or standard from the city water department, did that have any real bearing on the permit issuance and back and forth with CI?
We were told that the city building department was going to hold up issuing the permits until everything was addressed, and so they had to wait to get the street trees in the springtime.
Okay, so that was on
we were
the
informed of
city.
that in April. We didn't know that until then.
And second, there have been no requests for subsequent extensions for phase 2? I can't remember, or was there?
No, this, all the CI team asked for was to
Phase
have the
1.
board consider granting an extension for the project due to the delays. And so when we analyzed this phasing plan that you see out here that goes to 2023, we thought the really only impact was the phase 1, and that they can make the time frame for these other phases without any due hardship based on what happened on site.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
I was curious to learn a little bit more about the commentary of the water department about changing a standard after a permit was issued. That's typically not normal protocol, and in fact, if it increases cost to a developer, I've been on the other side of that equation, it tends to be a controversial challenge. If they issued the site development permit to Ignite and our contractor underneath a certain set of rules and regulations, I'm puzzled as to why we would accept additional costs on our side if they changed it after issuing the vested rights.
I'm puzzled too. I'm not sure if Mr. Boyd might have any other comments, but puzzled is a good word.
Yes, and I think one of the unique features is the relationship between the Urban Renewal Agency and the city. And so some of that, because we approached it the way a developer would approach it, was this is a new standard. You can't put a new standard on us when we're this part of the construction project. And then you start to get into this back and forth, and it gets elevated to Tony, and then eventually it gets moved to Tony and Troy, and then it's starting to delay the project, the argument. And there's been give and take by the city of Coeur d'Alene, who has extended grace in other areas that would not be extended to a private developer because of the Urban Renewal Agency. And so as Tony and I talked through that, it was, do we want to really really bump this up the food chain and get after it, or do we just want to acquiesce and move the 4 or 5 trees and get on down the road? So there wasn't a tremendous cost associated with that component, and because the city has been gracious on other ones, Tony concluded, let's just move the trees. It was I can't remember, maybe $2,500 to move the trees. It was pretty small. What we weren't aware of was that they were holding hostage, might be a little aggressive a term, but holding building permits hostage through things that the master developer was doing. We weren't aware of that until we got communicated to by the SMOC team that said, hey, you guys are holding up our building permits. And we're like, how is that possible? And as soon as we found out about it, Johnny on the spot got out there, and Riviere responded, moved the trees, and did a couple of other things, finished the punch list, and we were done with it within a week. But I think that's from the context, it's primarily a relationship between, and Tony, I think is that a fair?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds like an eminently reasonable conclusion. It's nice to hear it's a two-way street with a
Yeah.
collegial relationship with the city. I think that's in the best interest of everyone in the process, and I only heard part of the story, so
Yep,
thanks
no,
for the
no,
background.
it's a good question.
Any other questions, comments?
Just one,
Keith?
Phil. Was there any conversation about whether this space between the water and the tree system was dictated by the state or any other federal agency, or is just a local decision?
I think it's a local decision, and it's a practical decision, because the short story, without getting into it, is if there's a small amount of moisture in the water meters, for whether it's a tiny leak or whether there's water getting down the roots from the trees will chase the water meters, and it will literally fill up the boxes. So the city water department has a very valid reason for wanting to do this. It's not an invalid reason, very practical from the long-term interest of keeping water rates low and not a bunch of maintenance in there. It was just kind of an after-the-fact thing that was a little bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I was kind of questioning the holding of the permits versus this, when it's something that could have been a little more
Yeah.
flexible.
Yeah, but we quickly got it resolved
Good.
and moved along.
If I could please have you and Tony make sure to get make sure we're aware of those exact costs of the change order, please.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Tony?
We would look for a motion for the board to extend that phase one from September 15, 2025 to April 30th, 2026.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments?
I think I just want to say, when we talked about this in Finance Committee, we did discuss that many of our developers have had needed a little extra time to get those first units going. It's a challenging site sometimes, and despite how much work we've done, and it's only fair to give grace to everybody in the appropriate times.
Reasonably.
Yeah, reasonably.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Nope. Motion carries. Thanks, Tony.
Mr. Chairman, next item is Welch Comer Contract Amendment 9E, Development Management Services. I'd like to invite Mr. Boyd up to chat with the board about that.
Thank you, Tony. Chairman Hoskins and board members, you guys have a memo in your packet. And the first task order amendment 9E is for an extension of the development management services. And that kind of, you guys have heard this, some of the board members have heard this 4 times before, because it's the ongoing services that we generally provide that have to do with selling the properties, writing the RFPs, which Heartland, our subconsultant, works on that. The Architectural Design Review Committee, which are both myself and Del Hatch work on that. And then also just the development management services. For instance, the task we just talked about, when we get the phone call of like, hey, you're holding us up, all those services get posted to that number, that project cost. Originally, we were going on about a 1-year cycle, and as Tony and I had talked about, you expect those services, the cost of those services, to go down over time, which they have, because on this last cycle, we went about 16 or 17 months before this contract amendment came before you. When Tony and I went through the estimate of services, we think it will be lower time associated because there's just fewer things to deal with, although sometimes stuff continues to come up. So that's what task order 9E is for, and I'm glad to answer any questions that the board might have.
I'd just like to say thank you for breaking it down the way you did in the memo, because it made a lot of sense, and so I appreciate it. I don't unfortunately have it in front of me to cite it, but it was good. Thank you.
One of the things we put in there that Tony and I have talked about over the years is expressing the cost of selling the property, not just selling the property, but all the development associated services as a percentage of the land sales. And if you were to think about if those properties were sold through conventional means with conventional commissions associated with them, it would be much higher than what was there. So I think the reason we've talked about that is that the board has cost effectively, disposed of the property. I know it sounds like a weird word, but has sold the property. So you guys have done a cost-effective way of doing that, and it includes all the other stuff, architectural review, coordinating with the developers, the builders, futzing with things when they run over irrigation and destroy things, and we have to hunt them down to fix them. It's all those services. And just to be clear, we don't run off and just do them. If something comes up and we hear about it, we call Tony or send him an email that says, hey, this came up. Do you want us to take care of it, or do you want to take care of it? Because a lot of times Tony will say, just let me take care of it. So he's managing our efforts.
Any other questions or anything?
I should know this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Phil, does Welsh Comer pay Heartland? Or do we pay Heartland?
You pay us and we pay Harlan.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
We also want to thank you for a job well done so far. It's been a good partnership.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Appreciate the breakdown, Phil.
So there's been a motion
Second?
and a seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr.
None.
Chairman, I missed who made the motions.
Did Chris make it?
I made the prior motion.
I don't think we.
Did we not make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I didn't think we could
Olivia
either,
made
but
the
I was
motion.
like, I'll go with it.
Olivia and Sarah seconded it.
Thank you.
Do you want us to vote on that again, too? Yes.
Danielle says yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed now? None. Motion carries. Thanks.
Thank you. The next task order is task order 29, and this is specific to the Phase 3. This is also, as Tony and I were talking through, the development management services, which some of those things we've been doing on Phase 3, specific to the attainable housing initiative, have been done under the prior development management services. When we were looking forward, Tony said, let's separate those out so the board can see the potential effort associated with headed down that pathway. And again, this is directed work. And so as Tony wants us to go do something, we would say, should we go do this? And he'll say yes or no. And I think that the scope of services that was laid out in the memo, kind of explaining the potential types of services that we might do. When something big comes along, and I think Tony will talk about one of them here in a little bit, like if the board decides to head down a master planning effort where we really want to look at the layout of this and talk about details and architectural standards, we would come back to the board with a specific proposal and scope of work with that, associated with that scope of work. So this is kind of ongoing directed work. And again, glad to answer any questions about this task order.
Any questions for Mr. Boyd? Seeing none, how about a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve Phase 3 Attainable Housing Development Task Order, or Amendment 29.
Thanks, Brennan.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? None. Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you.
Phil.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, just an update on the Atlas project. So the Atlas Project Ad Hoc Committee met again in April with representatives from the Idaho Housing and Finance Association to better understand potential financing models relative to deed-restricted attainable home ownership on the Phase 3 site. That meeting went very well. I think we learned a lot. And the offer firm, the ISFA team, is there if we need any more help to please pursue that with them. So it's nice to know that they have the ability to help us down the road. Regarding the level of attainable home ownership on the Phase 3 site, the board's, just as you recall, the board's current position is 50% attainable lots and 50% market rate lots on the Phase 3 site. That was kind of the direction given quite a few months ago. As the ad hoc committee has been evaluating potential attainable home ownership models for the Phase 3 site, a question has arisen from a few entities as to whether Ignite CDA would consider a level of 100% attainable home ownership on the Phase 3 site. The ad hoc committee feels that including this potential level of attainable home ownership in their analysis would be important to help understand the financial impact to the agency as well as the value proposition for this level of attainable home ownership for the community. And thus, the ad hoc committee is looking for direction from the board, not a decision, just direction from the board to entertain looking at a potential of 100% attainable housing on the Phase 3 site. I have 3 of my 5 board members that are on the ad hoc committee if they would like to add anything to that conversation, but it's just would open kind of the breadth of the analysis to include that possibility.
With no decision at this time, just discussion.
Just direction, if you would,
Yep.
if you would give the green light to the ad hoc committee to kind of pursue that in their analysis.
Can someone from the ad hoc committee
Sure.
share a little bit more, please?
We can give a little background there. We've had some really good, positive conversations with several different potential partners on this project. And as it turns out, through looking at some of the financial modeling, there's a possibility that if our strategic objective is to find the point of diminishing returns for pursuing attainable housing within the balance of our fiduciary responsibility, we probably can attain more than 50%, or at least we think there are some creative solutions about mixing property types and property forms that might allow us to generate more units on the project if we were to creep closer to that 100%. It's not definitive yet, but we didn't want to overstep our bounds as the ad hoc committee to go about modeling things that the board hadn't agreed was within the realm of feasibility. So I think it's simply just the freedom to explore further, which is all positive signals that we're getting really good ideas, some good creativity, lots of ways to figure this out. None of the final answers aren't clear, but we think we can probably advance the mission even further by getting closer to 100% and obviously coming back with a more fully formed proposal before we asked for board approval.
Mr. Chair, I just add that this ad hoc committee has really kept top of mind that they want to have a quality project, and something that I think the quote is, don't remember who said it at the meeting, was probably Chris, not something that we can just have people be able to live in for the next 20 years, but in 25 years, people will want to live in this community. And so we've not been cutting back thoughts of aesthetics or sacrificing density just to get that 100% number. We're keeping all those things in mind to create a quality example of what can be done with attainable housing. So I think that's really important to note as we explore that, reaching a 100% number.
Thank you. Anything else?
I agree with what has been said.
Perfect.
It's well stated.
Tony, do you need a motion from us then to?
No motions needed.
Just,
I'm sensing a general agreement and a direction to have the committee to expand their horizon a little bit and explore the 100% attainable in the analysis.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it sounds exciting what they're doing, so.
I appreciate all the work
Very
you guys have
creative
done.
ideas are coming out of it, and very, I'm personally very happy that this ad hoc committee is grasping the multiple opportunities for avenues to get to that 100%. There isn't just a black and white one way to do it. There's going to be, I think, some multiple ways to get it done.
Excellent, excellent.
Another bit of color commentary to reflect to the board. We're not the only ones grappling with this problem. We know that intuitively, but every consultant we're talking to has other examples of other communities. So it's a chance for us to really glean best practices about this. We have a tentative meeting, I think, coming up soon with an architecture firm that's done this in several other communities. There's some Missoula project examples. So there's a lot of good things we can be learning out there and not having to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So this process has been really informative, I think productive, and I'm excited to continue it with your blessing. So thank you
All right.
to the rest of the board.
Perfect.
I love all the work you have already done, so thank you for all of that. And we did look at it in the Finance Committee as well, and so I think it's definitely worth looking into.
Absolutely.
So we appreciate you being creative.
I just want to say, again, I appreciate the ad hoc committee and the efforts that you've been making in the context and the conversations and the sharing of the information. I remember when we very first started talking about putting attainable housing on the Atlas Mill site, we struggled to agree to 25% in the very beginning, and now we're considering, or at least allowing ourselves to consider the possibility of 100%, and that goes a long way to say about how dedicated this team is and that committee is to trying to figure out the best solution for our community. So I appreciate your guys' time and effort on that committee.
Well said. It's interesting. It's fun. We're learning. Anything else? Next up on the agenda is board commissioner comments.
I just have one final
Sorry,
thing.
Tony.
Just closing out the executive director's report is that, we're still working on bringing Phil to the Phase 3 site, and ITD has released the bid packets for the I-90 project, so we are monitoring that situation and trying to get the right venue in place for informing potential bidders on the possibility of bringing some fine structural material to the Phase 3 site. So we're working on that. And with that, I'll end the Executive Director's report.
Thanks, Tony. Sorry to jump the gun there, but. So, Mr. Boyd, how many more cubic yards of structural fill do we need?
Chairman Hoskins, it's around 35,000. Yeah.
It's smaller every month. Thanks very much. Now it's time for board commissioner comments. And I have one. If everybody remembers, the Idaho legislature passed House Bill 436 recently, which allows certain taxing districts, a fire district or an ambulance EMS district, to opt out of the tax district. And this is all brand new. We had a meeting today with, well, there's Kootenai County Fire and Rescue and Kootenai County Ambulance have sent the proper paperwork in to Tony to opt out. So that's the reason for the special call that Tony sent everybody an email on, and we have to have that meeting by June 4th. There's some very structural timelines and stuff, and we're all learning on this, and we'll have the special call meeting and decide then what to do. And in the meantime, and Tony and Danielle and our legal team down in Boise have lots of information and data to gather and try to ferret this out.
I would just add that they have indicated their request to be allowed to opt out, but that's a decision that's made by the board upon further consideration of the information, the obligations that the district has as compared to the revenue that's generated by those, on behalf of those entities. So that's what Tony's going to be working on, is that analysis comparing our obligations to those revenues and coming to the board for consideration of how to move forward. So it's not a done deal at this point.
No, that at the special call meeting, then we'll decide whether to allow that, I guess, say yes or no to that.
I guess I have a question, is why would they choose to opt out? And it's just a lack of maybe me understanding the process here.
Good.
Well, it's money.
I would just say that they're looking at every avenue to generate revenue to provide their services. You've probably seen there's numerous, especially fire districts, seeking override levies. A lot of those small fire districts, had some volunteer force as well as paid force and are needing to move over to all paid force. And they have not been supported by the community very well in elections. So I think that it's just a move to protect revenue that's available to them to satisfy their budgetary requirements. It's not a, move in ill will or anything. I think it's just, how do we protect everything we have to be able to satisfy our statutory obligations.
Okay, thank you.
So during that special call meeting, are you going to provide them with that dollar amount, that revenue amount that they would
Right.
be?
The analysis will be, very complete and detailed, and it will be shared with the board. And we will invite the different representatives from the different EMS and fire districts to attend the board meeting if they like to. But we'll present the board with all the information you will need to make a decision whether to grant the request or deny the request. And depending on the action that you take at this first special call, there'll probably be a second special call if it's needed for certain actions. So as Commissioner Hoskins said, we're learning our way through this right now. It's brand new. There's timeframes. The taxing districts had to approach the county by May 1st to get information. They have to get to us by June 1st, and it's very compartmentalized on the time frame. So we will do this the right way.
And the time frame for our decision is?
We have to have a special call board meeting by June 4th. 10 days after we get notice of our opt-out request, we have 10 days to schedule and hold a special call meeting to address the request. Okay. 10 business days.
And we need to come out of that meeting then with a resolution, though, correct? Of yes or no?
Not, as my understanding, not out of this first meeting. You will make a decision whether to agree or not to agree, and then that will dictate what the second meeting will entail. Is that right?
And there's potential that you could delegate if
depending on the direction, potentially we wouldn't have to have 2 meetings. You could delegate authority to Tony to move forward.
Correct.
But we're still
Yeah.
trying to, like Tony said, sort out how it's going to work logistically, because as you can imagine, the statute doesn't lay it out as cleanly as we would hope. So we're working through that with the team down in Boise, and we'll come back to you with more direction, and we'll provide you with time to review that in anticipation of that meeting.
And we do get to dialogue about both taxing districts in one meeting, in the same meeting, so we don't have separate meetings for those.
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification, for a special call meeting, are the quorum and digital allowed still the same?
Yes, they are.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, and Mike, that's a wrap. Thanks.